Hey everybody. So, you know, again, through the grapevine, I've observed things that lead me to think that some people may be confused and mad at me. And, this is something that's been on my heart for a little bit, so I probably should have spoken on it sooner. So I'm sorry for that. But, so being a drug addict, man, for like long-term drug addict, 15, I started when I was started smoking weed. Within a couple years I was taking Oxycontin, and from then on it was painkillers and alcohol for 15 years on and off. So there's things that happen when you choose to do that all the time, every day, and it's like it's not that I was just choosing to do that. Like that was my go-to thing. Like, I wasn't thinking about pussy. I wasn't thinking about getting a good job and getting a house and a car and all these type of things. Like, my mind was in deep shit, but at the same time, the deep shit was always like that's another thing. Like, all that thinking and stuff, like it worked well with doing the drugs. Like, the more I got high, the more I enjoyed thinking, and my imagination could expand, and I could go to different areas of perception. And there's a lot of comfort there, and I because I've felt different. I mean, everybody's different, but it's like I really haven't like felt comfortable socializing with a lot of people, like in a sense where I'm like really being myself. Like, it's different now. Like, when I didn't really know, as I've gotten older, I'm more comfortable with who I am and speaking on who I am. But it's not easy, like being, especially in growing up the way that we grew up, and like all these schools and the social fucking orders and jocks and nerds, and like I was like somewhere in between of all these different things, and it's like I didn't, speaking, having this desire just to want to share love with everybody, and like not be mean to people, and like that's like not the cool thing to do when you're growing up in school. So because of that, like there like psychologically, like part of me like wanted to keep that away from everybody, and I think that's why I turned to a lot of darkness and drugs and pain and even violence as a way of coping with my a lack of an outlet for love, for what I really thought love was, which wasn't all this fucking, I mean, it's different for everybody, but I just, I never really felt like I saw anything that I really had a good, like what resonated within my soul with what I feel like love really is to me. I wasn't able to find that anywhere else in the world, really. I mean, some music like would touch on it and this and that and here and there, and be like, okay, cool. And I never grew up with the Bible. Like, I never went. My parents never took us to church, even though we technically were Christians. But like, they never took us to church. Never, gave us Bible studies or schools or anything like that. My mom gave me a Bible, like a kid's Bible, when I was a kid, and I remember going through it. And I would look at the battle scenes, and that was about it. But I never learned about it. But I always felt like I had a good. I'll just be honest. I always felt like I had a good relationship with Jesus. I always respected, the Word and what I learned about the Word as I grew up, even before I got into studying the Bible. Um, but even then, like then getting more into Christianity, and I start to look at them, and it's like, well, hold on a second, you guys still aren't even really hitting the love the way that I feel it should, like that what I feel a good relationship to love is. So, even with Joshua, like Pops, I mean, he's 7 years younger than me too. So it's like, there's a lot of things he did teach me. There's a lot of things I didn't know about until he showed me, and like the way he dealt with the situation on the streets with the guy with the gun, like like that psychology, like I was talking about, like the rebellious, the violence, all that, like more like in that moment, if I was the one who had seen that and walked over to the dude, I probably would have been more in line with like, do you want to fight, like type shit, instead of doing what Pops did, was just spreading love. But I want to say this too, that situation, like he told me afterwards, because we've talked about this many times, he was ready to take that fucking, because he saw the gun, he saw it in the dude's fucking waistband, he was ready to take that shit out of that dude's fucking waistband and like do what he ever needed to do to end the, like, just quiet the situation down. So like, even though he went in there with love, and he did, he was still prepared to do whatever the fuck he needed to do to make sure that motherfucker didn't pull that shit out and point it at us. But the point is, he started it off with love because he saw the demon in the dude, and he was like, okay, I'm gonna talk to the Christ, the angel, the loving spirit that I know I birthed into him. I'm gonna speak through that, and then get that going and have that diffuse the situation, and it worked. It totally did. But he was still ready, if he needed to be, to pull that fucking gun out of that dude's waistband and take it from him before that dude could fucking get a shot off on us. So But I'm getting a little off topic here. I just wanted to say that like I've spoken a lot about somebody in some pretty serious, I mean, serious, just profound ways. And I could see how, from other people's perspective, it seems strange and confusing and even extremely, maddening for me to speak about these things about a particular person and for me not to follow up with action. And, again, I want to say that, like, I initially wanted to wait until I was ready, because like building up confidence, like when you're a drug addict, not only do you get used to having certain stimuli in your fucking head all the time, and then when you stop taking it, you don't have those stimuli in your head. So it's like you're literally dealing with a whole transition of your perception, your organs, your neurons, the way everything fucking runs. So it's like it takes time to get back into like a normal, healthy cycle. And even then you got to deal with all the residual effects of everything that you did. I mean, it's really not a fucking good way to live, man. Tears up your organs, there's all sorts of shit. So anyway, this is why I try to be very adamant about the fact that, like, hey, it's like it's me, like I'm fucked, I'm still healing here, like I'm fucked up, but I still have these feelings for somebody that I want to express, because for a long time while I was doing all these drugs, even though I was doing all these drugs and I was suppressing myself, I was still thinking about a particular person all the time, and it's like then you start taking those drugs and you don't have those things suppressing those feelings anymore, and so it'll drive you, literally, I think it will drive, at least it will drive me crazy if I were not to say anything about it. Like, especially when I felt like I was getting messages from a third-party source specifically to me, and it's like, okay, well, here I am receiving these messages from somebody, and I'm seeing these synchronicities that are correlating things that I'm feeling are coming from a particular person that I'm also been having thoughts about for a very long time. So it's like I could choose to just receive these messages and not do anything about it, or I could choose to at least speak on it in some type of a manner. I chose to speak on it. Maybe it was, I don't know. I don't. That's what I chose to do. But I see now, by me choosing to speak on it and not following up with really trying to connect with that individual. And especially when I went and decided to share more intimate details about myself and desires and my being, I can see how that can make people uncomfortable. I can. I'm growing too, man. I make mistakes all the time. I sin all the time. It's like, it's not like we're all growing here. So, and by the way, I don't condone people showing off their body the way that I did, on the internet. Because we live in it's just what like the whole naked thing. Like, I love to be naked. I do. I really do. It's fucking awesome. I love the way I feel. It's better for my energy and all this and that. But we got to be realistic, man. We live in a time with a lot of sexual perversion. And a lot of people are tempted by sexuality. A lot of people use sexuality to cope with things. They get distracted by things. And there's sex all over the fucking place. So, and I've also heard from people in nudist communities that there is a lot of sexual perversion that happens within the communities. So this is just something that's, I do think there's a lot of healthy things that can be had from it, and it's a very freeing experience, and it's good for you to express yourself and be comfortable with who you are and your body and all this and that. But at the same time, it needs to be done under the right circumstances. It needs to be done in a mature manner with people whom are like, it probably should maybe even be, I don't know. I just don't, sharing that in this world, in this manner, in the way that I did, really isn't the right thing to do. So I acknowledge that. I don't regret it though, because I needed to do that, and it's also me showing that I'm not as strict and stringent on things as it may seem like at times. I'm very flexible. I love flexibility. I like versatility, as long as it's not hurting people. That's why in the right situation, it's totally fine to be naked. But in the times that we're living in and doing it publicly and all this and that, you got to be careful. I was in a desperate mood, so I did some decisions. I knew I was playing with shit, so that's why when like bad stuff happened, that's like, yeah, you was warned, man. You did it anyways. It's like, yep, I did. So I had to take my licks, and I took them. So anyway, but I could just, and then like now being 36, like I know you guys see this face and this person and this body, and it's like you guys, you don't know what it's like though. Like, I really do feel like unable